On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks have their third straight victory, and this one was a wild one, an overtime thriller in Boston. Atlanta is now 2-0 at TD Garden this season. We'll get into all of how that happened, overtime, and much more, and all that's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1890 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you late here on a Saturday night into Sunday morning. And today's podcast is sponsored by PrizePicks. And now it's perfect time to join up with folks at PrizePicks as well. Download the app right now and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. $50 instantly when you play your first $5 in a lineup. That's right. Nobody actually needs to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed for you at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, make it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcasts. That includes Apple and Spotify. Plus, we are on YouTube. And take you behind the curtain a little bit here on the podcast. I teased over the weekend on a show that I did on Friday with my friend Robbie Cowan that I was probably going to pair Hawks Celtics with Robbie in the Western Conference. If you are an audio subscriber to Locked On Hawks, you probably already know this, but I dropped that podcast as a standalone because it became quite clear during the game on Saturday evening, that it was going to be one that needed its own episode. I have some logistical challenges. Hopefully this podcast is coming to you and with some clarity. I am not my normal recording setup. I did not have the opportunity to watch the game like the same way that I normally would, but I was able to watch the game back quickly after the fact. None of you care about this. It's all about the game itself. And honestly, the Hawks had a pretty memorable and, in the end, awesome victory on the road in Boston, 119-115 in overtime against the Celtics. And this is their third game in a row they've won in pretty memorable fashion. They're now 2-0 in Boston for the first time since 2009, 2010. That was before I covered the team. And I covered the team for a long time, a decade plus. And that was before I was on the beat, so to speak. So it's been a long time since the Hawks actually swept a two-gamer in the regular season up in Boston. And now with this win, Atlanta is 6-1 against the top three teams in the East. And they've now won 6 straight games against them. 2-0 against Boston, 2-0 against the New York Knicks, and then 2-0 against the Cavs. The one loss was actually earlier this year at home against Boston, where they actually got killed in that game. But ever since then, they've been just beating good teams. And, you can't rely on this all the time. Like, the Hawks are not quite in that same stratosphere all the time, game to game, but their highs are very high. And with this win, Atlanta's now 22-19 at the halfway point of the season. So they're on a pace to win 44 games. Will that happen? We'll see. But it was a very good win, honestly, here on this Saturday. And as we'll get into later on, they were down 10 with 10 minutes to go. And I've been saying this all year long. If you listen to the podcast regularly, you will have heard me say it. The Hawks have been really resilient and impressively so, in my opinion, this year. Like, a lot of young teams might, roll over when things are getting difficult, especially on the road in Boston. They've won games shorthanded. Obviously, a great example of that was the win earlier this week in Chicago without their top 3 scorers when you go to Keaton Wallace and Daquan Plowden and they go crazy, which we discussed heavily on the podcast. But even when you have all your guys back, at least most of them back in this game, you're down 10 in the fourth quarter against a good team, the reigning champions on the road. Things are not going your way. You're not making shots, all those things. And the Hawks just gutted it out. And, Coy talked about it after the game as well. It was easy to see, like, that's been a theme all year long. They've had some blowout losses, but for the most part, they've been really keen and I keep using the word resilient for a reason. That's the one that keeps coming back to me. Resilient and, flexible and all those things. It's just been really impressive to see that from a young team. And that was kind of emanating through tonight's game. Just notice at the top of the podcast, the Hawks got Jalen Johnson back after he missed the previous 5 games with the shoulder issue. Hopefully he is all good from that. He was not incredible in this game, but obviously good to have him back. And he's been a linchpin all year long for the Hawks. They've been really struggling without him on the court, even within games. To have him back is obviously massive. And then Trae Young and DeAndre Hunter come back after missing the game in Chicago as well. Notably, Zachary Richeche did not play in this one. He's out for at least the weekend as the Hawks are playing in New York on Monday. The Hawks said, actually on Friday, they'll be reevaluated when they get home to Atlanta after that game in New York on Monday. All right. Anyway, all that said, I'll get into kind of my broad analysis now, and then we'll kind of dive into how this game floated. By the way, there's a lot to get to from regulation at the end, plus the overtime period. But my number one thing in this game is the Hawks played extremely well on defense in this one. Now, I led with that a little bit on Wednesday when they beat the Bulls, and I believe that was the case. Like, the Hawks were obviously impressively resilient on offense in that game with all how limited they were personnel-wise. But I thought that was a undervalued, under-discussed key to the game against the Bulls was just how good the defense was. Now, in this game, it was not under discussed. It was certainly out there. And yeah, Boston ends up scoring 115 points, but it's an overtime game. Context is necessary. And the Hawks ended up with a 104.5 defensive rating. What that means is they allowed less than 1.05 points per possession against a top tier team offensively in Boston. And let's just get this out of the way now. There was some help from Boston. Boston was 15 of 52 from three in this game. That's 29%. Now, that percentage is not totally out of line. Obviously, that's below where you would expect. That's a lot of attempts, and they do beat you in the math game. The Celtics try to do that a lot. And yeah, if they had shot better from three in this game, the Hawks might have lost it. But you need some positive variance sometimes when you're playing on the road as by the way, a 10-point underdog, according to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, in this game, and Boston obliged. Particularly Derek White was 5 of 16, Jaylen Brown 2 of 9, Jason Tatum 2 of 9, Sam Hauser 0 of 5. Like, that's going to happen sometimes, but the Hawks did a good job contesting. I want to be very clear about that. It was not just the Celtics missing shots. Do I think that Boston might have made more shots than this if you simulated this game with the same contests over and over again? Yes. There was some good fortune, I think, for the shot making. But the Hawks did a very good job defensively throughout this game. They made life at least somewhat difficult on Boston throughout. And here's one for you. The Celtics were 25 of 52 on 2-point shots. That is sub 50% from two. That is fantastic defense around the rim for Atlanta. Only 42 points allowed in the paint in an overtime game. That's an excellent figure. Even when your opponent's taking a lot of threes, that's still good to kind of wall off the paint, make things difficult for you. There were some defensive rebounding issues. This actually, I sort of looked this up after the game to make sure that I wasn't crazy. But with Capella on the court, the Hawks were awesome on the glass in this game, actually. They had a 78% defensive rebound rate. That means they grabbed almost 80% of Boston's misses with Capella at center. And that's a number one in the league kind of level. Without him on the court, with Okongwu at center, it was 59%, which is like way worse than the worst team in the league level. There's some variance there. That's the one thing that Capella is still very clearly better than Okongwu is defensive rebounding. And by the way, there's noise in there too. I'm not blaming Okongwu. By the way, Okongwu's really good this game. We'll talk about that later on. That was the one thing that I would say the Hawks did not do incredibly well in this game defensively was defensive rebound, but they did create some havoc. They had 10 blocks and 9 steals. And here's a crazy number for you. They had a 78 defensive rating in half-court settings. So when Boston was able to run, they were pretty good. And early in this game, the Hawks had some issues getting back, and Boston was able to kind of take advantage of that. But as the game went along, it got better and better. And a 78 defensive rating in a half-court is like a 90th percentile. Really, really impressive defensive performance. So one more time here, just broadly speaking, I think it was really nice to see them Hawks repeat this. It was different personnel this time around. It wasn't the backup unit kind of flying around. It was their top guys doing what their top guys do. And Dyson Daniels was awesome in this game, as we'll talk about later on. Okongwu was really good. I thought Jalen defensively did his job in this game. Trae was competitive. Like, it was a really good performance on the whole for Atlanta defensively, but I wanted to lead with that side of the floor because that was where, for me, they won this one. Now, offensively, they did enough. They had a 109 offensive rate. That's actually way below average. They had 52% true shooting in the game. That isn't very good. But this is actually pretty crazy. It goes back to the defense to some degree. The Hawks shot 9 of 37 from three in this game. That's 24%. And to go on the road in Boston as a 10-point underdog at FanDuel and win shooting 24% from three is a hat tip to basically everything else that the Hawks did in this one. Not only the defense, but they also, unlike the Celtics, the Hawks made up for it inside the arc. They shot 60% on twos. That's a big, big factor. They had 60 points in the paint. They won that up by a lot. Dyson Daniels was 10 of 11 on twos. Most of those were like floater range. Like, they were not difficult necessarily, but he was creating them and making them. Not a small thing. And they had some turnover issues early in the game, as we'll talk about later on. They turned the ball over a lot, especially in the first quarter. But they got to the line a lot, 28 attempts. And one more time, to not shoot it great and still win on the road as a big underdog is very impressive. Trae, basically 28 and 11 for him. He was very good along the way. Dyson, I mentioned before, Okongwu was really pivotal once again with 19 and 13. Talk about those guys later on. Hunter made a bunch of big shots late, even though he didn't shoot well from three in this one. So on the whole, obviously it's a January game. Like, I'm not one to come on and say let's celebrate too much. But going from winning a shorthanded game in Chicago this week, where that was a fun win in a lot of different ways, and having the great story of Keaton and Daquan Plowden having those games in that spot was really a lot of fun. This was a versus A game. Boston, I'm sure, was not overlooking the Hawks. They beat them last time in the NBA Cup, all that stuff. And Atlanta just went in there and stole this one. Like, they played very well. And, not to throw a parade too much, but 22 and 19, after 41 games is well above where people were projecting this team nationally, and the Hawks have earned that respect. And again, beating these good teams is not an accident. The Hawks have been playing up to their competition. Yeah, they've had some rough moments playing down as well to teams that they are better than, but on the whole, a very, very fun night. And we'll talk about more about how this game unfolded later on in just 1 second. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Basketball season is heating up, of course. There's no better way to get a real money action when watching your favorite NBA stars than with PrizePicks. Whether you're a diehard fan or someone who likes to love the friendly competition across the NBA, PrizePicks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. It's the best place to get real money sports action across the board, and they have over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, and they made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Here's how it works. You pick more or you pick less on at least 2 players in a wide variety of sports, including the NBA, NFL, college sports, baseball, et cetera, et cetera. And when you do, you actually have a chance to win up to 1,000 times your cash. If you think your favorite player is actually going to drop 30 points or get a bunch of assists, they'll let you make your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. I've been using PrizePicks for a long time now. Let me tell you, it's really a lot of fun. They have this flex play option as well. If you use that, if one of your picks does not hit, you actually can still double your money at PrizePicks. Plus, what you hit on a lineup, you get your money fast, as quickly as 15 minutes sometimes, and it's honestly the best way to keep it exciting for you. And now is the perfect time to join up with the folks at PrizePicks. Download the app today and use promo code LOTSONNBA, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. That's right, no need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed when you download the app today and use that code. It's locked on NBA. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we'll dive in now to how this game kind of unfolded, and it was pretty rough in the first quarter, honestly. They lost this quarter by 12 points. That speaks for itself. And speaking of that resilience that I talked about earlier, to go down this way, come back, and not give up, not roll over was pretty notable to me. But they had ball security issues in the first quarter. They had 4 turnovers right away, 6 in the first quarter. They didn't shoot well from 3. They did a good job, though, staying engaged, I think, and playing through some obstacles. And the second quarter flipped completely. It's basically a tale of 2 quarters. Like the first quarter, they got drilled. Second quarter, it was 31-15 in favor of Atlanta. Some of that was bad shot making from Boston. They were 5 of 21 from the field in that quarter, 0 of 8 from 3. But defensively, the Hawks were good. They made 5 threes. Okongwu made 2 threes. They had a 14-3 run in the middle of that quarter, which was pretty impressive to take the lead there. They also started well at halftime. Coming out of the halftime break, they scored 12 points in the first 3 minutes and went by 9 points. There was this big left-hand dunk by Capella. They got the entire bench rowdy. Actually made the national rounds a little bit. The reactions were funny, especially from Larry Nance and David Roddy, I thought, in the reaction shot. But that was a kind of a shocking dunk from Clint in that moment. But the good vibes did slow down a little bit in the third quarter. In fact, there was a 23-6 run by Boston to retake the lead. Atlanta missed 9 of 10 shots at one point, and Boston kind of just started making the shots they were missing in the second quarter, to be honest with you. But they got into the quarter break down by 5, but they were down by 10 with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. It was definitely wobbling. And look, if you asked me at that moment in time, will the Hawks win, yes or no, I would have said no. I would have given them a chance to win, to be sure. But if it was just a binary yes or no, I would have definitely said no, down 10. But again, credit to them for bouncing back. They had a 12-2 run over about 3 minutes to tie the game, 6 minutes to go. And how about this? That run came without Trae and Jalen for part of it. That was pretty notable to me. The Hawks were able to kind of get back in the game with their bench unit. Now, there were some shots that the Boston hit, especially there was one by Peyton Pritchard that was kind of a tip-your-cap moment late in the game. But Hunter, after Hunter did not shoot well from 3 in this game. He had a couple of big, contested mid-range jump shots in the fourth quarter. That's a big thing for him in a lot of different ways here. I thought Quinn let it go a little bit too long with Trae, Jalen, and Okongwu all on the bench in this game, and that might have burned them. They were down actually 5 when they came in with 3:30 to go. But after that timeout, they got 4 consecutive stops. And then Trae scored 5 points in a row on his own, take the lead with about a minute to go. There was a very, very soft foul call on DeAndre Hunter to send Derek White to the line to tie the game. Quinn challenged it. I don't blame him for that. I think they were not going to win the challenge, but it was not. It was a letter of a law foul, maybe. It was a very soft call. What made me and others upset about that call was that this is a game that was not called super tightly. They let a lot of stuff go in this game, and to call that there was pretty frustrating, I have to say. The next trip down, which Quinn noted after the game as well, kind of on his own, they set up a great shot in a tie game. DeAndre Hunter gets a catch-and-shoot 3 on the left wing, a shot that he probably makes 50% of the time, honestly. It's a wide-open shot from three-point range. It's not automatic. It's still 3. He misses it, but Quinn said after the game that, Dre and Trae, Hunter and Young, got together after. We're like, yeah, that was a good shot, good process. Just stay in the game kind of thing. And that worked out very well. And then, of course, I would say it was kind of frustrating because there was on on the other end of the floor, Jaylen Brown has a nice shot making moment where like you just trade. Like, it was a much more difficult shot than what Hunter made. Sorry, that what Hunter missed. It goes in. It's a make or miss league sometimes. And then down by 2, Okongwu turns it over after an errant pass. He got kind of caught in a really bad spot, I thought, offensively. It was, if you watch the replay, Trae is being held so badly the entire possession, trying to get free to help Okongwu out. No call. And then Trae gets a technical foul. So I said this in real time, and I still mean this. Trae cannot get a technical foul there. Now, the Hawks won this game. Obviously didn't burn them, but getting a technical foul in the final minute as a star, like in a game that's still close, it's bad. Now, I should have also added this on social media. I think it's probably good to have some context now. I also hate calling the T on Trae there. Like, I don't understand why you would, if you're the official, intervene in the game at that moment in time. Like, I just don't think, unless Trae stuff is something that's truly crazy, you can't team up there. So it's kind of both ways. I think Trae's got to know better, but also, what are you calling a technical foul for? Alas. And look, the Hawks probably should have lost this game at the end of regulation with how it went. Boston turns it over, up 3. If the Hawks have to foul there, if Boston makes even one free throw, they are in deep trouble. They're down 3 already. They have to foul, or at least try to foul. But Jrue Holiday probably could have just ended the game with an open shot. He didn't take it, which isn't like totally crazy. But what you can't do if you're Jrue Holiday is pass up on that shot and then turn the ball over, which he did. So that was a huge, huge, huge swing toward the Hawks that I think people are kind of forgetting now. Because, look, down 3 on defense late, like, you got to be really lucky. And the Hawks were lucky there. Now, Boston then fouls the Hawks to avoid a game-tying shot attempt. That's probably smart. That's the way I would do it anyway. Trae makes both. Then they foul Jason Tatum, star player, etc. The Hawks had to foul down by 1. Tatum only makes 1 of 2. That was a big, big moment in the game. So the Hawks are only down by 2 instead of 3. And then, I don't know if, and I've not seen Boston's postgame as I'm recording this. I don't know if Jrue would say this or not. I think Jrue Holiday thought that they were up by 3. Because if you watch the playback, he's pretty clearly trying to foul Trae, like in a weird way, because they had no foul to give. Either Jrue thought they had a foul to give, or they were up by 3. One of the two. And neither one was the case. So they fouled Trae semi-intentionally. Trae just goes to the line, makes both, ties the game, and they're going to overtime. So I don't know what happened there, but pretty good fortune for the Hawks at the end of regulation. That worked out well for them. Then, in overtime, if you missed this one, there was a scuffle between Tatum and Okongwu in the first minute of overtime. There was nothing called, no change in the score, so like it doesn't actually really matter, but that was a weird moment. Like, how is there not technical fouls called there after the one that Trae got at the end of the fourth quarter? It was a weird play. It also took a long time to review, and nothing was really called. Pretty odd stuff there. And then Okongwu had a big 3-point play after that for the lead with 2 minutes to go. They dodged an open 3 by Tatum on the other end of the floor. And by the way, Boston shot making in the overtime period. Woo, not great. Dyson Tatum exchange buckets. Trae gets a pretty bad possession. Actually, the Hawks are up by 1. Trae probably waited too long to go. Took a pretty bad step back, missed it. But Boston calls timeout. Hawks up by 1. And then Okongwu makes a great play, helping off of Neemias Queta, who's in the game because the Boston did not have Horford or Porzingis, which is probably pretty important in this game. But Okongwu knows the personnel, helps there, blocks a shot on Brown. Great play. Brown got it back, though, but Brown kind of like panicked for some reason and threw the ball away. I don't know what he was trying to do there, but that was a nice play by the Hawks overall. They get the stop. Then, after a timeout, Jalen got away with one. It was a very bad inbounds pass. Peyton Pritchard deflects it, almost stole the ball. It went right to Trae. That was a very lucky moment, I would say, for the Hawks. But Boston had a foul. They actually didn't foul Trae right away. Trae passed to Jalen, which maybe he shouldn't have done, but ultimately gets to Jalen, who gets fouled, and Jalen misses both free throws. That left the door open for Boston. The Hawks are still winning, but that's a bad moment, except for Okongwu, fittingly, gets a massive offensive rebound on the glass. They have to foul him. He makes both, which is huge in that moment to make both, to go up by 3. And then Tatum misses a shot that would have tied the game, and that's it. So, a lot to get to there, obviously, and my analysis kind of comes and goes versus what actually happened in the game. But I thought the Hawks made a couple of big runs, and down the stretch, like, they were the more composed team. Like, there were some mistakes. Like, again, I mentioned about before that Trae possession where I think he waited a little bit too long to go and had a bad shot. Jalen missed 2 free throws, but then Okongwu bails him out. Like, it's a team thing. The Hawks did a lot of things well. Obviously, guys are really good and really not great. Some of the guys were not perfect in this game, but it was not a singular, like one person dominates kind of game. A lot of guys did a lot of things well. Trae was the guy as he always is. He was, semi-efficient in this one, 11 assists. Okongwu was awesome again, as we'll talk about later on in the podcast. But overall, a really strong team win for Atlanta. And we will get to the player-by-player evaluations to end the podcast in just one moment. First, though, work with my partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, and make the NFL playoffs even more exciting at FanDuel. And right now, if you're a new customer, you bet $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet at FanDuel. That's $300 to keep the action going for you. The FanDuel app is really easy to navigate. There's a variety of bets to keep games every, and it's really so exciting along the way. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite teams or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, they have you covered at FanDuel. They have all stuff you're looking for across sports betting space, from over-unders, point spreads, money lines, player props and game props, future bets, same-game parlays, live betting, and so much more. The app at FanDuel is safe and secure as well. They cover the entire range of sports. That includes the NBA and the NFL, of course, plus college football, MLB, WNBA, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer. They have auto racing, it's F1, NASCAR, etc., boxing, MMA, and so much more. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to join up today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. One more time, that is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season even more unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we'll dive in now to the player-by-player evaluation. This one, 9 guys played for Atlanta. It was a firm 8-man rotation for the most part, and then Garrison was kind of the 9th guy at 14 minutes. DNPCD for Roddy. By the way, they had Keaton Wallace in the G League again today, which people were really mad about. I think it's okay with Trae available. Keaton played in the G League tonight, actually, and Plowden got a DNP. No surprise there, along with Don Barlow. Anyway, Garrison Matthews, 14 minutes, didn't make a three. He was over 3 from 3, but was actually plus 12. A couple actually had one really nice drive to draw a foul that was nice to see. He completed defensively, 2 steals and an assist. I don't think he was the reason they were plus 12 in his minutes, but obviously he did his job despite being 0-3 from 3. In this one, Bogey was pretty quiet, 7 points on 4 shots. I think he needs to have more usage, generally speaking. I don't know if he's still not healthy or whatever. I'll save the conversation about Bogey for a later date, but he's just not been very good, and that's fair to say. People have been mad at me for not pouring it on with Bogey. I tend to just be more big picture, and I tend to lean on sample size more than some people do, and that's fine. I'm not saying that I'm right about that. I tend to think that Bogey probably is going to bounce back a little bit and get back to his old stuff. But look, he's at the age where it's not a guarantee that happens. So TBD, but he was not particularly awesome, nor was he just terrible or anything like that in this game. DeAndre Hunter, 32 minutes off the bench because of the overtime period, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and an assist for DeAndre. No turnovers, notably. He was only 1 of 8 from 3, which is not great, but 5-6 on 2s, a couple of big ones in the fourth quarter, like when the Hawks kind of just needed some offense. He made a couple of contested mid-range jumpers. That's not always the best shot in the world, but sometimes you got to have shot makers, and Hunter definitely is one of those. I thought he played pretty well despite not making threes in this game. Okongwu was awesome again. 32 minutes, 19 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks for Onyeka. And look, it's one of the better 3-game stretches of Onyeka's career. I've watched every game he's ever played, and I'm not just saying that because I have. I've watched every game that he's ever played with the Hawks with some depth. I've covered them all. And he's now averaged in the last 3 games 18 points, 16 rebounds, 3 assists, only about 1.5 turnovers, and he shot 61% from the field. Those numbers are probably not going to continue, but he was really good in this one defensively too. I mentioned before, the defensive glass is not great, but it was not because of him. He rebounded just fine personally. The 4 blocks, he's been playing great. And trust me, I understand people want to have him start now. He's playing better than Clint right now. Even as resident Clint Capella defender, Okongwu's been the better player for a little while. Now, I'm way less focused on starting lineups than everybody else is. Okongwu played 32 minutes tonight. That's plenty. He doesn't need to play that much more than that, but he is playing really well right now. Hopefully it continues. My friend Tyler Jones bugging fun at me about this. I mentioned with Brian Schroeder a week ago on the pod that the Hawks are not totally set in the future at center, and Okongwu's not really ever forced his way into that conversation, or at least by himself. And since then, he's been awesome. So hopefully that's going to work. I've always liked the Onyeka, so hopefully that buys in. He's been playing very well in recent days. All right, to the starters. Capella, 21 minutes, 3 points, 9 rebounds. Clint was not as bad as people thought he was today, I don't think, but he wasn't particularly good. I think he played pretty good defensively, except for early on. He had a really rough start to the game, which probably didn't help perceptions, but did rebound well, and I thought made a couple of plays around the rim, had the big dunk, which was funny. It actually was his only field goal. He was not good, but he was not like horrific either. So there's that. But Okongwu was much better. And I think it was pretty clear early on that Quinn, and I agree with this 100%, set up the rotation to close with Onyeka at both halves, and that made total sense to me. Like playing as much as he possibly could made sense, and the Hawks did that, and it worked out well. Vit Krejci started in place of Reece Shea, 7 points for Vit, 3 blocks. Nice stuff there. 2 assists, 2 rebounds. I think he was okay. They used him as a defensive sub a couple times late in the game. Passing is always a pretty good positive for Vit. He was just kind of low-key. He didn't play great, nor was he bad, I didn't think. Jalen Johnson, not his best game, 14 points on 16 shooting possessions, so below average as far as efficiency was concerned. But the rebounding is always huge. 13 rebounds for him, 3 assists, stealing a block. He had some turnover issues, I thought. He was certainly rusty. He's not played in a couple weeks. No issues there. Hopefully, he is healthy. That's the biggest thing. As long as the shoulder's okay, we'll see if he can play Monday. I'm assuming he probably will, but TBD on that. But that was the biggest thing, is that he came back, and the Hawks have been so much better with Jalen on the court this year, and that continued in this game. Dyson Daniels, 40 minutes, 23 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Did have 5 turnovers. That's probably way too many for him, but +6. I mentioned before, he was 10 of 11 on 2s in the game. This is his 3rd highest scoring game of the year. And by the way, his number 1 highest scoring game of his career actually was in Boston this year. So in the 2 games in Boston, he's at 51 points. Now that's not always going to happen, but he got downhill repeatedly in this game, and you love to see that. He took 3 threes, that's fine, but the assists were there. I think, by the way, defensively, he was great. He always is, but he was great in this game, even with only, quote unquote, only 1 steal. He might not get like the normal pop that he might get when he has 5 steals or whatever, but I thought he was really, really good, valuable defensively, and a big game from him. And then Trae, 28 points to lead all scorers for the Hawks, 11 assists, 2 steals. By the way, he was credited with 2 blocks. I think both of those were like strips on the way up, but still, hey, blocks are blocks. +3 in the game. He was 7 of 13 on 2s, which is actually pretty good. 3 of 10 from 3, just mediocre there. But 5 at free throw line, 28 points on 25 shots. We find efficiency-wise, competed defensively. I thought he was pretty good along the way. The passing popped, as it always does, and we'll leave it there for now. All right, lots of words. Hopefully that was coherent. Like I said, weird situation for me logistically today, but hopefully this podcast comes through and you can listen to it and watch it if you'd like to on YouTube. The Hawks from here go to New York for MLK Day. I will hold the rant for another time. I already did it once, but the Hawks not playing at home on MLK Day is brutal. I absolutely hate it. They should be playing at home on Monday, but they're not. And that's just where we'll leave it for now. It's a 3 o'clock start. It's also not a national TV game. The national games are Wolves, Grizzlies on TNT, and then Celtics and Warriors after that. So the Hawks are League Pass / FanDuel Sportsbook Network. There you go. Check that out. And that'll be a fun game. The Hawks, by the way, are 2-0 against the Knicks this year. I'm sure the Knicks will be up for that one because they were bounced in the NBA Cup by the Hawks, but Atlanta's been playing really well against these good teams. And regardless, there's this really brutal road stretch right now for the Hawks schedule-wise, and to go out and win these 3 games, like 2 of which being on the road in the middle of the stretch, is like massive stuff. They come home, by the way, finally after the game on Monday to play the Pistons and then the Raptors twice in a row. So if they can take care of business in those games, maybe win 2 of the 3, maybe even all 3 of them, they're in good shape. But no matter what, getting a couple of road wins here is really, really impressive and important, and a fun night at the office for everybody involved on this Saturday. All right, that's all I have, everybody. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Please like the video on YouTube, as well as telling your friends about the podcast. And also please follow the show on Twitter /X at Locked On Hawks. I'm also there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. If you want to follow my non-podcast work on the Hawks, it's at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll see you all next time.